In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on February 7, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Washington Wizards versus Brooklyn Nets. On the surface, this matchup looks like pure chaos basketball. Washington rolls in with a record of 14-36. Brooklyn sits at 13-37, and both are buried near the bottom of the East. It feels messy at first glance, but once you start peeling it back, the situations on each side are really not the same at all. The Wizards just went all in on their future to bring in Anthony Davis and Trae Young, yet neither of those headliners is actually touching the floor here. Davis has already been ruled out for the rest of the regular season with those hand and groin issues after that blockbuster move from Dallas. Trae is still on the shelf at least through the All-Star break with knee and quad problems. So that shiny new super team everyone was picturing is more of an idea than a real basketball product right now. What you actually get is still that ultra-young, ultra-erratic Wizards group, held together by steady veterans like C.J. McCollum, but now carrying the weight of superstar expectations without the superstar presence to match. Brooklyn, on the other hand, actually has its main pieces ready to go, which changes the feel quite a bit. Michael Porter Jr. is in uniform and putting together the kind of scoring season that gets you into all-star conversations, leading this Nets team in both points and rebounds, while clearly settled as a Brooklyn cornerstone. Nick Claxton is still anchoring the middle as the starting center, healthy enough that you see his name all over rebound props for this matchup, which tells you books expect him to be active on the glass. Then there is the rookie backcourt of Igor Daman and Nolan Traore, both locked in as Nets guards, quietly becoming the emotional heartbeat of this roster. They just combined for 47 points in Orlando, with Daman hanging a career-high 26 in that last outing. That is not just hype or vibes, that is a real offensive core that is actually available tonight, not hypothetical. The ugly part for Brooklyn is hard to ignore. They have dropped 15 of their last 17, and a couple of those losses were full-on disasters with 50-point type blowouts. Weirdly, that is exactly what makes this spot so interesting. They finally get back home. The organization is leaning into the young group. That rookie-heavy Flatbush 5 unit has been one of the few bright spots, and the noise coming out of the locker room is all about accountability and effort instead of surrender. It is speculative, sure, but stretches like this often punch a team's pride in the face. In front of a home crowd that has watched them get run out of gyms, there is a real chance you see that quiet enough is enough response where energy and focus tick up, even if the talent is still a work in progress. Washington is almost the mirror image story. The front office pushed all their chips in on big names, but for this particular game, they are missing huge chunks of that theoretical depth chart. Beyond Davis and Trae being out, recent reports have Cam Whitmore done for the year with a shoulder problem, Dante Exum also out for the season with a knee injury, and Trey Johnson still without a clear timetable because of that hip flexor strain. Tristan Vukcevic is dealing with a knee issue and is listed as out in the latest previews. Jaden Hardy and D'Angelo Russell, both brought over in the Davis trade, are floating in that day-to-day, still getting integrated bucket rather than fully settled pieces. So there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of touches that end up back in the hands of the same young core that has already been asked to carry a huge load. Stylistically, the Wizards are playing fast and loose, sometimes almost too loose. They sit in the top 10 in pace at around 100.8 possessions per game, but they are bottom 3 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, with roughly a 111 to 112 offensive rating and a defensive rating north of 120. That profile screams run-and-gun chaos more than organized firepower. Brooklyn is sitting in that bottom-tier efficiency neighborhood too, with an offensive rating around 111.5 and a defensive rating near 118.3, so they are not exactly a machine themselves. The one thing this particular matchup hands them is that they are in Barclays, no travel drag, familiar rims, and role players who tend to feel a little more comfortable and confident at home. Now the market angle gives this whole thing another layer. Despite how bad the Nets have looked, books are still pricing them as the team expected to handle business at home. The public, though, really does not buy it. Most of the spread tickets are piling up on Washington with the points, and a solid chunk of the moneyline bets are chasing the Wizards as well. It is that classic two bad teams, just give me the dog mindset. When a heavily injured, chemistry-scrambling road team with a sidelined superstar core is getting that much love and yet still sits as the underdog, it usually hints that the number is already tilted toward that side. In that kind of setup, the value often lives on the uncomfortable favorite, the team the books seem a bit more relaxed about than the crowd is. So when you stack it all together, a healthier primary core actually available in Brooklyn, a Wizards' new era that still exists more on paper than on hardwood, Washington's fast but wildly inefficient style, and a betting market that is heavily leaning toward the road underdog, it starts to shape into one of those gross, hold-your-nose games where the home favorite quietly has the cleaner path to covering. Especially if that painful mess in Orlando really did nudge their effort level up even a little bit for this spot. As our first pick for this matchup, the Brooklyn Nets to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. You hear young teams, bad defenses, and Wizards love to run, and it is easy to picture a track meet. But once you look at how these offenses are actually functioning right now, it starts to feel more like one of those games that sounds fun in theory but gets pretty clunky once the ball goes up. Brooklyn has spent the last couple of weeks reminding everyone why they sit near the bottom of the league in scoring. Heading into that Orlando matchup, they were stuck at about 107 points per game on roughly 44% shooting from the field, and then they backed it up with another outing that did not even crack triple digits and came with a pile of turnovers. That is not the profile of a group bubbling up for some sudden explosion. That is the kind of offense where every clean look feels hard-earned, and long empty stretches where the scoreboard barely moves are almost baked into the script. Washington is a little weirder. They absolutely play fast, they push the ball, they lean into tempo, but they are doing it with a roster that is missing the exact headliners that were supposed to give all that pace a sharper edge. Anthony Davis is not just out, he is expected to miss the rest of the regular season with those hand and groin problems, and Trae Young still has not logged a minute in a Wizards uniform while he works back from that leg injury. So instead of that clean star-powered core, you get a patchwork, youth-heavy set of lineups that can look awesome for 4 possessions and then completely stall for the next 4 minutes. Anyone who has watched young teams knows that rhythm, where the energy is high, but the scoring comes in choppy bursts instead of steady waves. Putting both of these offenses in the same gym for an early local start adds another subtle wrinkle. Those noon-style tip-offs often feel a little sleepy. You can almost picture players still rubbing the morning out of their eyes in the first quarter, and that usually favors defense and missed jumpers more than a smooth back and forth. Throw on top of that the fact that both coaching staffs have just sat through some pretty embarrassing blowouts, and you can imagine the film sessions. A lot of talk about better defense, taking care of the ball, cutting out the lazy mistakes. When coaches hammer those points, possessions tend to slow just a touch, guys hesitate an extra beat, and that is how you end up with more late clock heaves and fewer clean early clock looks. So instead of a free-flowing shootout, what starts to come into focus here is a game where the pace may look lively on paper, but the actual scoring has to fight its way through 2 shaky half-court attacks, some tired legs at an early start time, and coaching staffs begging for tighter defense and fewer giveaways. It is not hard at all to picture long, grinding trips up and down the floor where both sides burn clock, hunt something decent, and still end up with contested jumpers as the horn ticks down. That kind of rhythm can make the scoreboard feel a step behind the style, which is exactly the kind of pattern that favors a lower final number than you might expect from the names involved. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston Rockets versus Oklahoma City Thunder. The Houston Rockets head to the Paycom Center on Saturday to take on the Oklahoma City Thunder in NBA action. The Rockets just dropped back-to-back games against the Celtics and the Hornets, and they have the Clippers on deck, so this stretch is a bit of a gut check for them. They have still managed to win 9 of their last 14 games, so the recent slip does not erase the fact that they have been playing solid basketball for a while now. Oklahoma City is coming in off a win over the Magic followed by a loss to the Spurs, with the Lakers waiting for them next. The Thunder have been on a serious heater overall, winning 44 of their last 56 regular season games, which is the kind of run that usually earns a lot of automatic respect from odds makers and bettors alike. The injury report pulls some of that shine away from this particular matchup. Houston is still without Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, and Jae'Sean Tate, so they are not exactly at full strength themselves. On the other side, Oklahoma City has ruled out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, and Jalen Williams, which takes a lot of playmaking and defensive teeth off the floor. They are also monitoring LaGuentz Dort, Chet Holmgren, Jared McCain, and Isaiah Hartenstein as game-time decisions, so there is a decent amount of uncertainty with the Thunder rotation that could show up in how they start and finish quarters. These teams have already seen each other twice this season, and the Thunder took both meetings, one by a single point and the other by 20 points. That kind of history can stick in a team's mind, especially the blowout, and it gives Houston a little extra reason to show up with some edge here. The Thunder are going to get the benefit of the doubt from a lot of people simply because they are the Thunder at home, and the big picture numbers still look impressive. However, they are missing their best player along with other key pieces, and they're against the spread mark of 25 to 26 to 1 shows that the market has caught up to them quite a bit. As has been mentioned about this group, this is not the same automatic moneymaker version of OKC from the last couple of seasons, and you can feel it when late-game covers slip away. Houston, even with their own absences, is the healthier side in terms of star power, and they badly need a statement-type performance to reassure themselves they belong in the real title conversation. Those losses to the Celtics and Hornets were rough and a little embarrassing, and spots like this can become a chance to reset the narrative inside that locker room. With all the injuries stacking up for the Thunder right now, this matchup sets up for a tighter game than the reputation gap between these teams might suggest. I still expect a close contest, and despite how shaky the Rockets have looked in their last 2 outings, the setup leans toward Houston hanging around and pushing for some revenge in this meeting. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Rockets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The scoring profile for Houston starts with their offense sitting at 115.5 points per game on 47.2% shooting from the field, while they give up 110.1 points on 46% shooting. They are knocking down 36.9% of their three-point attempts and hitting 75.3% at the free throw line. On the glass, the Rockets are pulling in 49.1 rebounds per game, and they are holding opponents to 34.8% shooting from beyond the arc, which quietly matters a lot when you are trying to keep games from turning into track meets. Oklahoma City brings more raw firepower, averaging 120.9 points per game on 49.2% shooting while allowing 107.9 points on 43.2% shooting. They are connecting on 35.9% of their threes and an impressive 82.4% at the stripe. The Thunder are giving up 37.3% shooting from deep and grabbing 43.6 rebounds per game, so they lean a little more on scoring bursts than on dominating the boards. When you stack those numbers side by side, it is easy to assume this game could turn into a high-scoring show, but the current personnel situation pulls things in a different direction. Key offensive creators are off the floor for both teams, and that usually shows up in slower offensive flow, more half-court possessions, and a few more empty trips than usual. Houston's ability to rebound at a high level can also help limit second chance points for a short-handed Thunder squad, which keeps the score from ballooning even if OKC shoots well in stretches. At the same time, Oklahoma City's defensive efficiency, even with some missing faces, suggests they can still bother Rockets scorers enough to prevent this from turning into a pure shootout. Put together, the profiles point more toward a game where scoring is solid but controlled rather than wild and free. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Dallas Mavericks versus San Antonio Spurs. The Dallas Mavericks roll into Frost Bank Arena on Saturday night to face the San Antonio Spurs, and it feels like these two teams are heading in completely different emotional directions right now. The Mavericks are coming off losses to the Celtics and the Spurs, and they have the Suns waiting for them next, so the schedule is not exactly giving them a breather. They have dropped 6 straight games, and that kind of skid wears on a locker room no matter how confident the group is trying to sound publicly. San Antonio, on the other hand, just beat these same Mavs and also took care of the Thunder, with the Lakers up next on their slate. The Spurs have won 8 of their last 11 games, which is the kind of stretch that makes a young team start to really believe that their internal hype might be real. The injury report shines a light on why Dallas has struggled so much. The Mavericks are still missing Derek Lively, Kyrie Irving, and the newly acquired Chris Middleton and A.J. Johnson, so the rotation has been patched together on the fly for a while now. It is hard for any team to look like its best version when key pieces never seem to be available at the same time. San Antonio has its own absences, with Lindy Waters III, Luke Cornett, and Jeremy Sochan ruled out, so their depth is not perfect either. Even so, it feels like the Spurs have more continuity at the moment, more guys in familiar roles, and that matters when you are trying to stack wins instead of just surviving each night. Cooper Flagg has completely changed the tone of the Mavericks season almost by himself. He just became the youngest player in NBA history to score at least 30 points in 4 straight games, which is wild for someone at this stage of his career. He also joined Michael Jordan as the first rookie since 1985 to put together 4 consecutive games with at least 30 points and 5 rebounds, which is the kind of stat that makes your jaw drop a little. With 151 points over that 4-game span, he matched a scoring burst that had not been seen from a rookie since Allen Iverson in 1997. For Mavs fans, that is basically the main storyline now. After sending Anthony Davis to Washington, it is pretty obvious that the front office is leaning fully into developing Flagg instead of grinding for wins over the rest of this season. It is not tanking in the classic sense, but it is a clear shift in priorities, and you can feel it in how the team is being coached and managed. San Antonio is thinking very differently at the moment. At 35-16 straight up, they sit second in the Western Conference, trailing only the Oklahoma City Thunder. With the defending champions dealing with injury issues, the door is open for the Spurs to chase that top seed if they decide to go all in on it. They are on a 3-game winning streak, and Thursday's 135-123 win over Dallas gave them a 2-0 lead in the regular season series. When one team keeps seeing the same opponent and beating them, it can build a real psychological edge, especially for a young core that is still building its identity. Adjustments should come from both sides heading into Saturday's game, and even when the chess match is subtle, it usually nudges the second meeting in a slightly different direction. Oddsmakers are still giving the Spurs a big cushion here, reflecting how strongly they are viewed compared to this version of the Mavs. It is a fair question to ask whether that gap is a bit too inflated given all of the moving parts on both rosters. It is actually pretty rare to see one team walk away with double-digit wins in both games of a quick back-to-back matchup like this. Much more often the second meeting tightens up, even if the better team still finds a path to win. I am not pushing as far as calling for a full upset, but Dallas has enough talent and pride to hang around if they lock in for 4 quarters. The situation for the Spurs is not perfectly clean either, as the uncertainty around Sochan, Cornett, and Fox as game-time decisions put some stress on their frontcourt and rotation combinations. That kind of late clarity can throw off rhythm, even for a team playing very well overall. The Spurs can certainly blow this open if everything clicks. They have that kind of ceiling, but their track record as a big favorite is not exactly comforting. They are 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 games as a double-digit favorite, which hints at some letdowns when they are expected to cruise. Since Christmas, they have even lost outright as a double-digit favorite, which sticks out and probably lingers in the minds of bettors. If you zoom out even further, since February 2018, the Spurs are 10-20 against the spread as a double-digit favorite, and that is a decent sample suggesting that this team type, or this organization vibe, does not always smash when heavily favored. These teams just played, so it is reasonable to expect a sharper, more competitive effort from Dallas. On top of that, the Mavericks are getting reinforcements from their recent trades, which help stabilize the rotation. This might end up being one of the most complete Mavericks lineups we have seen all season, at least in terms of balance and versatility, even if star power is still limited by injuries. The Spurs probably still find a way to come out on top, but the Mavericks are unlikely to simply roll over, especially with Flagg playing with this much confidence. As our first pick for this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Dallas Mavericks are averaging 113.8 points on 47% shooting from the field while allowing 116.5 points on 46.2% shooting. They are hitting 34.2% of their three-point attempts and just 74.5% from the free throw line. Defensively, they are allowing a strangely low listed rate of 3.6% from deep and grabbing 45.2 rebounds per game, so the numbers paint a somewhat quirky picture. The San Antonio Spurs are putting up 116.9 points on 47.3% shooting and allowing 111.8 points on 45.5% shooting. They are connecting on 34.6% of their shots from beyond the arc and 78.3% at the free throw line. They are allowing 36% shooting from deep and pulling down 46.5 rebounds per game, which keeps them competitive on the glass while still letting some perimeter looks fall for opponents. On paper, those averages suggest both offenses are capable of lighting it up, but the current context nudges expectations in a slightly different direction. Dallas is still short-handed and leaning heavily on a rookie to drive the offense, which naturally creates stretches of slower decision-making, more half-court sets, and a few forced shots as Flagg learns what he can and cannot get away with. Missed free throws and inconsistent three-point shooting can also cap their scoring, even on nights when the effort is there. San Antonio's attack has been more reliable, but they are not immune to grinding games down when opponents struggle. If the Spurs build a lead, they can afford to lean on their defense, control tempo, and pick their spots instead of running relentlessly all night. The uncertainty around some of their rotation players also hints at a game that might feature a bit more experimentation and a few awkward lineups, which tends to slow scoring bursts. These teams just combine for a very high-scoring game, but immediate rematches often tighten up. Coaches make adjustments, defensive schemes sharpen, and players remember which actions hurt them most the last time. That familiarity can lead to better closeouts on shooters, more targeted help on star players, and fewer easy transition opportunities. When you stack the offensive numbers alongside the fatigue factor, the injuries on both sides, and the natural adjustments that come with back-to-back meetings, the setup leans more toward a game where points are earned the hard way instead of piling up effortlessly. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Utah Jazz versus Orlando Magic. Orlando gets a fun one here because this matchup feels like two different basketball personalities walking into the same gym. Utah wants to run, play fast, and lean into that youthful energy, the kind of team that looks happiest when the game turns into a track meet. The Magic prefer something a little more physical, almost like a slow burn, where they test how long you can handle their size, length, and pressure over 4 quarters. Utah comes in with a record of 16-36, only 2 wins in their last 10, and they are grinding through another Eastern road stretch after a close loss in Atlanta and a wild, high-scoring win in Indiana earlier in the week. That makes this their third game in 5 nights and their second in a row in the Southeast, so the legs and focus get tested a bit more with every quarter that passes. Orlando, on the other hand, owns a 26-24 mark overall and has been very comfortable at home with a 15-8 record in their own building. They just opened this homestand by taking apart Brooklyn, winning 118-98, and Jalen Suggs put up a triple-double while Desmond Bane and Paolo Banchero flowed through the game without really needing to force anything. That kind of performance at home is the quiet reminder that this group can really lean on its strengths when the crowd is behind them and the rhythm is theirs. Markets have clearly treated Orlando as the stronger side here, which matches the general feeling you get when you compare these two rosters and where they are right now. Stylistically, Utah is one of the faster teams in the league, pushing the ball and trying to create early offense before defenses get set, but that pace has come with a very leaky defense that gives up clean looks and driving lanes more often than they would like. It creates exciting stretches, but it also puts huge pressure on their offense to keep up for a full 48 minutes, especially when they are away from home. Orlando plays at a more measured tempo, using their length on the perimeter and strength inside to disrupt actions, generate steals and blocks, and make every catch and cut feel slightly uncomfortable. That kind of environment is not exactly friendly to a tired road team that already struggles to get consistent stops. The context around the big men matters as well. Utah's front court depth has taken a real hit, with Walker Kessler sidelined for the season because of a shoulder issue, Kevin Love dealing with illness, and Keyonte George working through an ankle concern. They have brought in Jaren Jackson Jr. via trade, and he clearly raises their long-term defensive ceiling, but he is still being worked into the system, which means the communication and rotations are not fully polished yet. On the Magic side, they are missing Franz Wagner with his ankle problem and Colin Castleton with a thumb issue, yet they still throw out Banchero, Bane, Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, and a deep mix of big wings who can crowd driving lanes and contest shots. We have already seen, in that Brooklyn win and in recent home victories over teams like Toronto, that when Orlando senses an opponent that can be pushed around a bit, they are very willing to build a cushion in the middle quarters and then just sit on that space. Even with Wagner out rather than just sitting on the injury report as questionable, the combination of home court comfort, Utah's road wear and tear, the Jazz defensive issues, and Orlando's physical, layered style points us strongly in one direction for the spread. As our first pick for this matchup, the Orlando Magic to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. On paper, this looks like one of those classic high-scoring spots because Utah games have been wild for much of the season, with their offense able to put up big totals and their defense giving plenty right back. Orlando sits in a different lane, somewhere between explosive and methodical, but when you blend Utah's pace with that, it is very easy for people to assume a pure shootout. Honestly, that surface-level view is tempting, especially if you glance at some early season box scores or scroll through a game log on your phone without context. Here is the thing, though, the recent pattern tells a softer story. Utah still has that reputation as the fun, high-octane over team, yet several of their latest outings have floated under expectations, even when the scores look big at first glance. Tight games in places like Atlanta and Toronto managed to slip under stretch totals, and home dates against Brooklyn, the Clippers, and San Antonio have also ended with fewer points than many people anticipated going in. They still have stretches where the offense hums, but they also hit pockets with turnovers, forced jumpers, and empty possessions that chop a few possessions off the scoring pace without you really noticing until the final number appears. Orlando has its own quiet pattern in that direction. Against offenses that are not elite, they have seen more games finish under than over, including those grind-heavy losses in San Antonio and Cleveland and that one-sided defeat in Oklahoma City where they struggled just to get past 90 points. It is not that they cannot score, they absolutely can. It is that their style often pulls opponents into something slower and more physical, with more half-court sets, more free throws, and a little more clock bleeding on both sides. Trends also lean that way, with recent stretches for both teams showing more unders than overs, especially when you look at Orlando facing opponents from Utah's division, where the matchups tend to become more about length and physical defense than pure fireworks. Injuries tie directly into the scoring picture, too. Franz Wagner is out, and he is not just another starter, he has been the top scorer by average for the Magic this season, which nudges their offense toward more deliberate possessions through Banchero and Bane, more mismatches, more trips to the line, and fewer quick, free-flowing actions. On the Utah side, there is the fast, primary creator angle with Keontae George listed with that ankle issue, Kevin Love as a game-time factor, Elijah Harkless out, and the long-term loss of Kessler taking away an easy lob and rim-running presence. All of that pushes the Jazz into lineups that can feel a bit clunky, with more rookies and secondary ball handlers on the floor, which is exactly when you see late clock pull-ups, longer scoring droughts, and a game that feels busy but does not actually race past the number you had in your head. Utah will still try to push the tempo, and Orlando still has enough shooting to string together a fast burst or two. Yet when you add in the travel spot, the way big home favorites sometimes slow the pace if the game tilts their way, and the recent evidence of totals sneaking under lofty expectations, this setup points more toward a controlled scoring environment than a full-on fireworks show. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Charlotte Hornets versus Atlanta Hawks. The Charlotte Hornets head into State Farm Arena on Saturday night to take on the Atlanta Hawks, and both teams arrive playing some really confident basketball lately. The Hornets are fresh off wins over the Pelicans and the Rockets, and they have the Pistons waiting for them after this one, so this is right in the middle of a busy but rewarding stretch. They have won 11 of their last 14 games, which is not a small sample. It is the kind of run that changes how a team carries itself. Atlanta is coming and feeling good as well, with recent wins over the Heat and the Jazz, and a date with the Timberwolves up next on the schedule. The Hawks have taken 6 of their last 8, and you can tell they have started to settle into a rhythm after a choppy start to the year. The injury reports give this matchup a bit of extra texture. Charlotte has ruled out the newly acquired Malachi Branham and Kobe White, while Tidjane Salon is sitting in that uncertain zone as questionable. On the Hawks side, Jonathan Kuminga has been ruled out, and Buddy Hield, Onyeka Okongwu, and Gabe Vincent are all listed as questionable, which could really shuffle their rotation depending on who actually suits up. Even with those pieces missing, the Hornets come into this one as one of the hottest teams in the league. They have been stacking wins, picking off quality opponents, and it shows in how they move the ball and how quickly they snap into their sets. The Hawks have also been on a strong run, so this does not feel like a case of one team rolling and the other collapsing. It feels more like two groups meeting while they are both in a groove. Before the season, there was real belief that Charlotte could sneak into the playoff picture if they stayed healthy and actually locked in on both ends. Lately, they have looked like that version people were hoping to see. The Hornets have won 9 of their last 10 games and now sit at 31-21 against the spread for the season, which quietly says a lot about how often they have exceeded expectations. Confidence is clearly building, guys are playing with energy, and there is a certain bounce in the way they celebrate each other's big plays. Honestly, it is tough to make a strong case for stepping in front of that kind of momentum. The Hawks can look great one night and flat the next, which is why they still feel a bit hit or miss. They have already dropped 14 games at home, and there is not much of a fear factor about going into Atlanta right now. Opponents are not exactly intimidated by the building. Trying to fully separate these two teams on current form is not easy, but Charlotte has picked up some really solid wins lately, and they keep showing that their surge is not a fluke. With the way they are playing, it makes sense to expect them to stay aggressive and keep the hot streak going with another strong performance and a cover at this short number. For now, the Hornets bandwagon is rolling, and it feels reasonable to stay on it. As our first pick for this matchup, the Charlotte Hornets to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Charlotte Hornets are averaging 116 points on 46.3% shooting from the field, while allowing 114.2 points on 47.3% shooting. They are hitting 37% of their three-point attempts and an impressive 81.3% from the free throw line. Defensively, they are allowing opponents to shoot 36.6% from deep, and they are pulling down 46 rebounds per game, which helps limit some of those extra scoring chances. The Atlanta Hawks are averaging 117.4 points on 47.3% shooting and allowing 118.3 points on 47.6% shooting. They are knocking down 37.3% of their threes and 77.3% at the stripe. On defense, they are allowing 35.5% shooting from beyond the arc and grabbing 42.3 rebounds per game, which leaves a bit of room for opponents to control the glass at times. On paper, both offenses have enough firepower to light this game up, but the way these stats mesh with the current situation hints at something a little more controlled. Charlotte's improved confidence has shown up not just in scoring, but also in more disciplined possessions, fewer wasted trips, and a willingness to grind out stops when needed. That kind of focus can slow things down just enough, especially on the road, where teams often prefer to manage pace instead of getting into a pure track meet. Atlanta is capable of pushing the tempo, but their scoring is not always smooth, and if some of those questionable players sit, their spacing and bench shooting can dip. That typically leads to more mid-range looks, more drives into traffic, and fewer clean transition chances, which all chip away at the total number of points. Both teams also show some defensive resistance on the perimeter, with opponents' three-point percentages sitting in the mid-30s, so it is not like every shooter will be firing in open rhythm. If the threes are even slightly off on either side, and free throws do not completely bail out the offenses, the game can tilt toward a more modest scoring environment. When you combine the decent but not unstoppable shooting numbers, the potential impact of injuries on rotations, and the possibility that both teams treat this like a serious, playoff-style test, the setup leans toward a game where points are earned possession by possession instead of piling up with constant runouts and shootout pace. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.